You are Livia Marcella. The silk of your imperial stola is heavy saturated with the darkening crimson of your husband's life. But what they told the Senate about his death, that the fever took him, was a lie. 17 minutes ago, you were the Augusta consort of Emperor Gaius Aurelius Maximus. But now, kneeling on the cold palace marble, you are merely calculating the distance between yourself and the inevitable consequences of his sudden, violent illness. The air is thick with the iron tang of spilled blood, and the sharp scent of perfume you applied for a dinner that will never occur, making you realize that for 72 hours, the most powerful women in the world become targets for the soldiers sworn to protect them. The rhythmic, purposeful cadence of hobnailed boots echoing through the corridors is the sound of an oath dissolving, replaced by the grim mechanics of a new regime seizing power. And the purple cloth you wear, once the ultimate symbol of inviolable power, feels suddenly thin, a stark signal that the protection is gone and the terrifying clarity of your new reality has begun. The door to the inner sanctum opens, breaking the tense silence, and Lucius Cassius Nerva, prefect of the Praetorian Guard, enters, his face familiar from state functions, yet his gaze holds something utterly new, cold, clinical assessment, as he's merely calculating the cost of disposal, proving that the Praetorian Guard had killed more emperors than all of Rome's foreign enemies combined. Augusta, the title is a test, an echo of the power he just extinguished. My condolences on your husband's sudden illness. You look from the wounds on the body to the casual violence of his words, realizing the terrifying extent of the lie being constructed, understanding that the Senate will be told of a fever, a peaceful passing, and a successor, Titus Flavius Seius, named with the emperor's final breath, a man your husband hated and intended to prosecute. The truth is merely inconvenient to the swift, profitable transaction of power.
Nerva steps closer, his heavy boots momentarily silencing the blood-soaked floor, and he reveals the chilling timeline. Seius is 3 days away with the legions, which means the Praetorian Guard controls Rome absolutely for the next 72 hours. The dangerous, lawless period known as the interregnum, setting the stage for what followed the assassination. Not chaos, but a meticulously observed, silent tradition of violation. Your mind grasps the implication instantly. 3 days under the unilateral authority of the men who just murdered your protector, leading you to force your voice to remain steady, an act of sheer will against the rising panic. What is your plan for the emperor's widow? Nerva's answering smile is a terrible thing, devoid of warmth, filled only with predatory consideration, confirming that your fate depends on cooperation, value, and the level of trouble you generate during the transition. This brief, critical window, the hours between the emperor's collapse and the new emperor's arrival, was a period historically erased from the Senate's official records, but the fate of the women of the imperial household, those who lived within the palace walls, was acknowledged only by their sudden, silent disappearance from history. A widow retired from public life. A stepdaughter entered a private existence. Phrases that neatly concealed the severe suffering and violation of dignity that often occurred because these women were no longer protected by the emperor's power, yet not yet protected by his successor, existing in a terrifying legal and traditional vacuum, which is how the Empress survived the assassins. To understand Livia's peril, one must understand the Praetorian Guard, which, originally established as a protective force, had evolved into a self-serving, destabilizing military entity, routinely breaking oaths when profiting from a swift succession. The Praetorians represented the ultimate historical irony. The emperor's greatest protection was simultaneously his gravest threat, demonstrating that every Roman emperor knew the men guarding his bedchamber held the power to decide his reign's duration. Which is why Rome's Praetorian Guard was the silent horror of succession. Beyond assassination, the Praetorian Guard maintained an unspoken, universally acknowledged interregnum tradition. During this power vacuum, the Guard expected certain considerations: a colossal financial donative from the new emperor, political confirmation for its prefects, and, critically, access to the palace and its contents for immediate enjoyment, which, tragically, included the women of the imperial house.
This tradition was never codified, but it was enforced through shared, whispered knowledge, transmitted across generations of soldiers and anticipated with cold dread by every aristocratic woman serving within the palace, making them unique targets for soldiers who sought to dismantle the previous regime's privilege, highlighting the terrifying silence of Rome's power shifts. Livia Marcella knew this tradition, and her bargaining power was not beauty, status, or pleading, it was information. Nerva confirms his demand. The emperor kept records, lists of those he suspected, evidence he had gathered, plans he had made, which were explosive documents, especially those concerning Nerva's conspiracy with Sais, or the guard's internal failings. Nerva ends the discussion with a chilling statement of leverage. Livia's stepdaughter, Aurelia, and the 3 women of the emperor's private household have been taken for questioning in the guard's quarters, which is how she knew that only 3 days could destroy an empress. Their treatment, he specifies, depends entirely on Livia's immediate cooperation, giving her until midnight, perhaps 8 hours, to decide the fate of 5 women and herself.
You cannot remain beside the stiffening body. Grief is a luxury, weakness, and immediate danger. So your only path to survival requires movement and leverage. You must reach the records Nerva seeks before he does. Stained with blood and aching from the cold marble, you recall the palace's hidden architecture, the small concealed door behind the tapestry that led to the private passage, a secret known only to the most trusted members of the household, which is a desperate gamble, a long shot that the guards securing the main corridors have not yet discovered this hidden vein of the palace. The memory of your husband, who valued your intelligence and shared secrets other emperors withheld from their wives, drives your movement. The concealed door opens silently. It was engineered for discretion, and you step into the narrow, dimly lit service corridor. This hidden world of the palace, the plumbing, the storage rooms, the faint smells of labor and cooking, continues to operate, insulated from the violent shift in authority above, as servants move, perhaps unaware or perhaps keenly aware, and meticulously maintaining routine, knowing that routine is the safest harbor in a collapsing world. 10 agonizing minutes of careful navigation through the labyrinthine tunnels bring you to your husband's private study, a windowless cell accessible only through this hidden network, revealing how to escape the assassins. The records Nerva wants are stored in a locked cedar cabinet, and the mechanism is complicated, requiring knowledge shared with you alone. You open it, revealing stacks of scrolls and tablets marked with specific coded labels. And your fingers scan the possibilities. Evidence against Sais, now useless as Sais is the victor. Documentation against opposing senators, minor leverage. And then the critical discovery, a scroll detailing the Praetorian Guard's financial irregularities, proving that Prefect Nerva has been systematically redirecting funds meant for common soldiers, the donatives, into his own accounts for years. This scroll is not political leverage. It is lethal personal leverage. The common soldiers of the Guard are loyal only to their pay and their entitlements. So if they knew Nerva was robbing them, his command would shatter instantly, replaced by a swift, brutal internal purge. A story that reveals the ultimate betrayal of Rome's elite Guard. You seize this document, marked with the code you recognize, and select 2 others. Evidence of Nerva's communication with Sais, proving the murder was a conspiracy, not an opportunistic strike, meaning you now hold 2 weapons. One to destroy the immediate threat, Nerva, and one to neutralize the future regime, Sais. The sound of hobnailed boots echoes in the hidden passage. Leono proving Nerva's men have learned the secret routes through patience and bribery, and your brief advantage is over. You spot the final exit, a narrow vertical shaft leading down into the drainage system, designed as a final desperate escape route, showing how the Empress hid from the Praetorian Guard. You tuck the scrolls into your clothing, scrape your hands and knees on the rough stone, and descend into the absolute suffocating darkness. Emerging into a tunnel of sewage and stagnant water,
the unacknowledged infrastructure beneath the glittering surface of Rome, filthy, alone, but crucially alive, and armed with the fate of the Praetorian Guard.
The tunnels guide you following the flow of the water toward the light, and after an hour spent in the shadow world, you crawl through a grate, emerging into the crisp night air of the sacred precinct. You are in the courtyard of the Temple of Vesta, the sanctuary of the eternal flame tended by priestesses whose power derived from a religious law so ancient, so absolute, that even the guard hesitates to breach it, making the Vestals sacrosanct and their precinct asylum, which is why the Empress fled to the Temple of Vesta. You collapse on the paving stones, exhausted, covered in the filth of your escape, but secured. And the Virgo Maxima, the chief Vestal, Claudia Quinta, appears in the doorway, serene and utterly unsurprised by the sight of a blood-soaked Empress emerging from the sewer grate. "We had heard of your husband's illness," she says, her voice calm. "I see the reports were incomplete." You claim sanctuary and state the stakes. Your husband was murdered. Nerva is hunting you, and you possess documents that determine the imperial succession, explaining what happens when the Imperial Guard breaks. Claudia Quinta, who has witnessed 4 successions in her 23 years of service, does not offer simple comfort. She offers strategy, instantly recognizing the weight of the scrolls hidden within your clothes, stating, "Sanctuary is traditional, but those who claim it do not usually carry documents that could destroy the Praetorian prefect." She leads you into a private chamber where the eternal flame is visible through the doorway, a constant, unwavering symbol of Rome's survival, and you reveal the evidence. Nerva's financial theft from the soldiers. Claudia is ruthlessly pragmatic, a necessary trait for surviving 7 centuries of Roman turmoil, and she confirms the evidence against Nerva is lethal, but its careless release would only cause chaos, potentially consuming you. You need a recipient within the Guard who is both honest and anti-Nerva, and she names him. Tribune Marcus Aurelius Co., an old patrician who despises Nerva's low birth and honors the Guard's traditions above individual commanders. He is the weak point in Nerva's armor, revealing how to defeat the Praetorian prefect. But help is not free. The Vestals are offering a messenger, protection, and a route to Tribune Co., but in return, they demand a guarantee. A formally documented, legally binding agreement that the incoming Emperor Sais will not interfere with the Vestals' independent management of their substantial properties and treasuries. It is a calculated political transaction, survival now for future security, which is how the Empress secured her escape, making you realize the true power structure of Rome lies not in the fleeting emperors, but in the enduring institutions, like the Vestals. Your strategy crystallizes. Use the financial evidence to destroy Nerva and survive the interregnum, and hold the conspiracy evidence against Sais as insurance, ensuring your long-term independence once the new emperor arrives. A choice Claudia confirms as wise. She presents the messenger, a young, capable slave named Tursus, who possesses the clandestine network necessary to penetrate the Praetorian camp via the service kitchens. And you dictate the message to Co., appealing directly to his honor and self-interest, warning him that Nerva's corruption shortchanges every man under his command. Tursus departs for the Praetorian camp, and now begins the most dangerous waiting, but the peace of the temple is shattered by news from the palace. Nerva knows you escaped, and the search has expanded. Worse, Nerva has issued an ultimatum: surrender by dawn, or he will begin processing the imperial women he holds, specifically your stepdaughter, 19-year-old Aurelia, who is now in Nerva's private quarters for personal interrogation, meaning dawn is less than 6 hours away, which is the terrifying ultimatum Livia faced. Claudia offers the cold truth: you cannot save everyone, and surrendering would only create 2 victims, making you realize the rational choice is to wait for Co's response. Yet you cannot accept Aurelia's imminent fate, so you ask Claudia to activate another network, the palace slaves, reasoning that if the palace servants who despise Nerva receive word that his downfall is hours away, they might risk delaying the processing, buying critical time. Hope, you argue, makes people take risks they otherwise would not, and Claudia agrees to attempt this precarious communication, demonstrating how hope became Livia's weapon. 2 hours pass, the longest hours of your life, when the chamber door opens and Tirsus is back, his eyes confirming the triumph. Tribune Co agrees to act. He is assembling loyal officers for a 4th-hour meeting and demands the evidence be delivered in person to guarantee authenticity, because Co trusted the Vestal's word. Livia realizes the risk has just doubled. She must now leave the sanctuary, travel across Rome, and infiltrate the headquarters of the men hunting her, making her plan the silent horror of Rome's succession. Before you can plan the journey, the sounds of fighting erupt outside the temple, a violent pattern interrupt, because Nerva is here, confirming that for a man fighting for his life, no tradition holds power, as he has violated the sacred sanctuary of Vesta. Claudia thrusts a bundle into your hands and points to a final emergency escape route, a passage leading directly to the Cloaca Maxima, the great sewer, and the only possible destination is the Praetorian camp itself. Nerva will search the city, the temples, the houses of senators, but he will never expect the fugitive Empress to seek refuge in his own headquarters. Guided by Tirsus through the vast, stinking blackness of the sewer, the forgotten river of filth flowing toward the Tiber, you make your final approach to the Praetorian camp. The logic is chillingly sound. Safety in the heart of danger. You and Tirsus slip into the camp with a late-night supply cart, passing the weary guards unnoticed, and the meeting hall is lit. Tirsus goes first, whispering your identity to the guards loyal to Co. You emerge from the darkness into the hall, a bloodied, exhausted, yet formidable figure, confronting 30 suspicious officers, revealing the astonishing final destination of the Empress. You place the scrolls on the table, and when the officers question the authenticity and the severity of the theft, you appeal to their self-interest. Nerva stole from the donatives, from their own troops. The officers begin comparing the documents to their own internal records, and the confirmation is swift. The numbers match. The prefect is a thief. Then the final lever. You reveal the existence of the conspiracy evidence against Sais, offering it as an insurance policy. Help me destroy Nerva, and I will ensure the conspiracy evidence never surfaces, revealing the secret history of Rome's powerful widows. This proposition guaranteed stability for the new emperor in exchange for your life and the lives of the imperial women is irresistible. Co, weighing the verified theft against the political power of the insurance, makes his decision. They move at first light. Livia makes one last demand, to send a message to the palace slaves confirming that rescue is hours away, urging them to delay the processing by any means necessary, deploying hope again as a weapon of time. Nerva is lured to the camp with the fabricated news of your capture, and he strides into the hall, confident and gloating, only to find himself surrounded by 30 officers whose loyalty he had betrayed for years. Co arrests him for theft and conspiracy, and Nerva's authority collapses instantly. Simultaneously, Co's loyalists ride to the palace, arriving just minutes after the common soldiers had begun preparations for the processing, and Aurelia and the other women are found alive, saved by the narrowest of margins, the delay provided by the defiant, desperate slaves. Sais arrives 3 days later, finding Nerva executed by his own men and the succession orderly. He confirms Co's position and grants Livia her promised retirement, a lavish, independent life far from Rome, accompanied by Aurelia. The conspiracy documents remain hidden in Livia's keeping, revealing the terrifying secret history of the Empress's survival, which was not a triumph of justice, but a masterwork of negotiation. She exchanged one killer, Nerva, for stability's suppressed evidence against another, Sais, for security, and traded principles for protection. This video, created for educational and historical purposes, examines themes of power, corruption, and human conflict, without depicting explicit or graphic events, drawing upon historical testimonies, notably accounts similar to those penned by Livia Marcella, which survived in private archives.
These accounts detail the systematic violation and distribution of women during Rome's most dangerous power vacuums, the quiet horror that official histories chose to overlook, explaining the true cost of surviving Rome's power shifts. Remember Livia Marcella. She was not a warrior, but she survived the Praetorian Guard's interregnum by turning information into a shield and a blade. And her story reveals that Rome's smooth transfers of power often concealed systematic cruelties, the quiet violence against imperial women rendered vulnerable by the systems they served. If this story made you reflect on the fragility of power and the hidden costs of history, you're welcome to continue the journey with us and walk further into history's shadows with us.